The photograph burned in my mind like a brand. Bianca, blindfolded, somewhere dark and cold. The candle beside her flickered in the image, casting shadows that seemed to move even in the stillness of the picture. I stood in my living room, phone trembling in my hand, while SEI paced behind me like a caged animal. "We call the police now," he said, his voice sharp with urgency. "This is kidnapping. This is Elizabeth," I finished, my voice hollow. "And the police haven't been able to find her for months. What makes you think they'll find her now?" SEI stopped pacing and grabbed my shoulders. "Bro, listen to me. This woman has crossed every line. She's not just watching anymore. She's taken someone. An innocent person whose only crime was caring about you." The weight of his words settled on my chest like concrete. He was right. Bianca had done nothing except show me kindness when I needed it most. And now she was paying the price for my past. I looked down at the message again. "Now you'll know what it feels like to lose everything you love." The words weren't just a threat, they were a mirror. Elizabeth had lost me, lost control, lost her carefully constructed empire. And now she wanted me to feel that same helplessness. But there was something she didn't understand. I had already lost everything once. The fear of loss no longer paralyzed me. It only made me more determined. "Call Maya," I said, my voice steadier now. "Tell her what's happened. Then call the police. I don't care if they think they can't find her, they need to try." While SEI made the calls, I sat at my laptop and opened every social media account I had. If Elizabeth was watching me, monitoring my movements, then she was leaving digital footprints somewhere. People who obsess don't just disappear, they lurk, they watch, they engage from the shadows. I thought back to my years with Elizabeth. She'd always been calculating, but she was also sentimental in strange ways. She kept mementos, old photos, letters. She'd once told me about a house her grandmother owned in Scarborough, a place she'd visited as a child. "There was a house," I said slowly. "Her grandmother's house. She talked about it once, said it was falling apart but that the family couldn't sell it because of some legal issue." David's eyes sharpened. "Do you know the address?" "No, but her grandmother's name was Margaret Osanarchi. If there's a property record." "I'll find it," David said, already pulling out his laptop. Within 30 minutes, he had a lead. Margaret Osanarchi had owned a property on Danforth Road in Scarborough. The house had been abandoned for years, stuck in probate after her death. No one lived there, but the utilities had never been fully disconnected. "This is it," David said. "If she wanted somewhere off the grid, somewhere with emotional significance, this would be perfect." I stood up, grabbing my coat. "Then let's go." SEI stepped in front of me. "Bro, wait. If she's there, if she's really gone this far, she might be dangerous. We should wait for the police." "The police won't move fast enough," I said. "Every minute we waste, Bianca is in more danger." Maya placed a hand on my arm. "Tignola, I understand. But you can't go in there alone. Let David call his contacts, people who know how to handle situations like this." But I was already moving toward the door. "I'm not asking for permission. I'm ending this. Tonight." The drive to Scarborough felt like it lasted both seconds and hours. David sat in the passenger seat, calm and focused, while SEI drove with his jaw clenched tight. The streets grew quieter as we moved away from downtown, the houses older and more spread out. When we finally reached Danforth Road, the GPS led us to a house set back from the street, partially hidden by overgrown trees. The windows were dark, the driveway cracked and covered in dead leaves. It looked exactly like the kind of place someone would hide. "Stay in the car," David said. "Let me check the perimeter first." But as he opened the door, a light flickered in one of the basement windows, a small, wavering flame. A candle. My heart seized. She's in there. I didn't wait for David's response. I ran. The front door was locked, but the wood around the frame was rotted and weak. One hard kick and it splintered open, the sound echoing through the empty house like a gunshot. I didn't care about stealth anymore. I didn't care about caution. All I cared about was getting to Bianca before it was too late. The house smelled of mildew and decay. Dust hung in the air like fog, and my footsteps left prints on the grimy floor. Behind me, I heard SEI and David enter, their voices urgent but distant. My focus was singular: find the basement. I found the door beneath the staircase, a heavy wooden thing with a rusted padlock hanging from the latch. The padlock was open, dangling uselessly. Someone had been here recently. Someone who wanted me to find this. My hand trembled as I pulled the door open. Steep stairs descended into darkness, and at the bottom, I could see the faint glow of candlelight. Bianca, I called out, my voice breaking. No response. I took the stairs two at a time, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. When I reached the bottom, the scene that greeted me made my blood run cold. Bianca sat in a wooden chair in the center of the room, her hands tied behind her back, the blindfold still covering her eyes. The candle I'd seen in the photos burned on a small table beside her, now just a stub of wax barely clinging to its wick. She wasn't moving. Bianca. I rushed toward her, dropping to my knees. My hands shook as I pulled the blindfold away from her face. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and afraid. When she saw me, tears spilled down her cheeks. Tignola, she whispered, her voice hoarse. She was here. She was just here. It's okay, I said, working frantically at the ropes binding her wrists. You're safe now. I'm here. Behind me, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps on the stairs. I froze. How touching. Elizabeth's voice cut through the basement like a blade. I turned slowly, still kneeling beside Bianca, and there she was standing at the bottom of the stairs, backlit by the dim light from above. She looked different than I remembered. Thinner, paler, her hair shorter and darker. But her eyes, those eyes still burned with the same intensity that had once captivated me and then terrorized me. Elizabeth, I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Let her go. This is between you and me. She laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. Between you and me. Tignola, everything has always been between you and me. This, she gestured toward Bianca, this is just a reminder. A reminder of what? I stood slowly, placing myself between Elizabeth and Bianca. That you can't escape me, Elizabeth said, taking a step closer. That no matter how far you run, no matter who you try to replace me with, I will always be part of your story. You were part of my story, I said. Past tense. What we had is over. It's been over. Her face twisted with something between pain and fury. Over. You think you can just decide that? After everything I did for you. I brought you to this country. I gave you opportunities. I gave you a life. You gave me a cage, I shot back. You controlled every aspect of my existence. You manipulated, lied, and destroyed anyone who got close to me. That's not love, Elizabeth. That's obsession. She flinched, but quickly recovered. And what is this? She pointed at Bianca. This girl who barely knows you. You think she understands what we had? What we built together? We didn't build anything together, I said. You built an empire on lies and fraud, and when it collapsed, you tried to drag me down with you. I saved you, she screamed, her composure finally cracking. When the investigation started, I could have named you as an accomplice. I could have destroyed you, but I didn't. I protected you. You protected yourself, I said quietly. Everything you've ever done has been about control. About owning people. But I'm not yours anymore, Elizabeth. I never really was. For a moment, she stood there, trembling, her hands clenched into fists. Then, slowly, she reached into her coat pocket. Don't, David's voice rang out from the stairs. He stood there with his phone raised, clearly recording. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. The police are on their way. Elizabeth's eyes darted to David, then back to me. Her hand emerged from her pocket holding not a weapon, but a small USB drive. You want to know why I did all of this, she said, her voice suddenly calm, almost serene. Why I couldn't just let you go. I didn't answer. I just waited. She held up the USB drive. Because of this. Everything that happened, the fraud charges, the frozen accounts, the investigation, it wasn't my fault. It was never my fault. What are you talking about? I asked. The fraud was real, she said. But I wasn't the one who committed it. Your precious lawyer, Maya, and her partners, they were the ones embezzling from my companies. They set me up, Tignola. They made it look like I was stealing from my own business so they could take everything. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. That's insane. Maya has been helping me. Helping you? Elizabeth laughed bitterly. She's been using you. Why do you think she took your case for free? Why do you think she's been so eager to keep us apart? Because as long as we're fighting each other, we're not looking at her. I shook my head. No. You're lying. You're trying to manipulate me again. Am I? She tossed the USB drive toward me. It skittered across the floor and stopped at my feet. Everything is on there. Bank records, emails, recorded conversations. Maya and her firm have been systematically destroying me while pretending to help you. They knew that if we reconciled, if we compared notes, we'd figure out what they were doing. I bent down slowly and picked up the drive, my mind racing. Could it be true? Or was this just another one of Elizabeth's elaborate manipulations? Behind me, Bianca spoke for the first time since Elizabeth appeared. Tignola, don't listen to her. She's trying to confuse you. Elizabeth's gaze shifted to Bianca, and something cold flickered in her eyes. And you, the innocent bystander. Do you really think you're the first person he's turned to? That you're special? Leave her out of this, I said sharply. Why should I? Elizabeth took another step closer. She needs to understand what she's getting into. Tignola doesn't love, he escapes. From me, from his problems, from his own weakness. You're not his future, sweetheart. You're just his next hiding place. The words stung more than I wanted to admit, not because they were true, but because they revealed how deeply Elizabeth still wanted to hurt me. I'm done listening to you, I said. David called the police. They'll be here any minute. Whatever game you're playing, it's over. Elizabeth's expression shifted again, this time to something resembling sadness. It was never a game, Tignola. It was survival. When you left, when you took Grace, when you turned everyone against me, what was I supposed to do? Just accept it. You were supposed to let go, I said. You were supposed to heal and move on. Move on. She laughed, but there were tears in her eyes now. To what? I lost everything because of you. My business, my reputation, my daughter. You took it all. I didn't take anything, I said. You lost those things because of your own choices. The lies, the manipulation, the control, that's what destroyed you, not me. She wiped at her eyes roughly, smearing mascara across her cheeks. I loved you. In my own way, I loved you. Love doesn't look like this, I said softly. Love doesn't kidnap innocent people or stalk or terrorize. What you felt wasn't love, Elizabeth. It was possession. The basement fell silent except for the sound of sirens growing louder in the distance. Elizabeth looked toward the stairs, then back at me. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked truly defeated. "They're going to arrest me," she said quietly. "Yes," I replied. "They are." She nodded slowly, as if accepting her fate. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I hope she makes you happy, Tignola. I hope she's everything I couldn't be." Before I could respond, police officers flooded down the stairs, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Elizabeth raised her hand slowly, that USB drive still clutched in one palm. As they handcuffed her and led her away, she looked back at me one last time. Her eyes were empty now, the fire finally extinguished. And I realized, with a mixture of relief and sadness, that this was truly the end. The police station was chaos. Officers moved in and out of rooms, phones rang constantly, and somewhere down the hall, I could hear Elizabeth's voice rising and falling as she gave her statement. Bianca sat beside me in the waiting area, wrapped in a blanket someone had given her, still trembling occasionally despite the warmth. SEI had gone to pick up Grace from Bianca's parents' house, promising to keep her distracted until I got home. David stood near the window, speaking quietly with one of the detectives, occasionally glancing my way. In my pocket, the USB drive felt like it weighed 100 pounds. "Are you going to look at it?" Bianca asked softly, noticing where my hand kept drifting. I pulled the drive out and stared at it. "I don't know. Part of me thinks it's just another manipulation. Another way for her to create doubt. But part of you wonders if she's telling the truth," Bianca finished. I nodded. Maya has been almost too helpful. Too invested in keeping Elizabeth and me apart. But that could just be good legal strategy, right? Keeping us from communicating so we don't complicate the case. Or, Bianca said gently, it could be exactly what Elizabeth said. You won't know until you look. A detective approached us then, Detective Williams, the same officer who'd questioned me months ago when Elizabeth first ended up in the hospital. His expression was grave. "Mr. Adiwale," he said, "we're going to need a full statement from both of you. But first, I need to ask, did Mrs. Elizabeth give you anything? Any documents or devices?" I hesitated, then pulled out the USB drive. "She threw this to me. She claimed it has evidence that my lawyer was involved in the fraud she's been accused of." Williams's eyebrows rose. "Did you access it?" "No. I was going to turn it over to the police." He took the drive carefully, holding it with a tissue. "Smart. We'll need to examine this as evidence. If there's anything relevant to either case, hers or yours, it'll come out in the investigation." "How long will that take?" I asked. "Could be days, could be weeks. Depends on what's on here and whether it's authentic." He paused. "In the meantime, I'd suggest you be careful about who you trust. If there's any truth to her claims, you could be in more danger than you realize." After giving our statements, Bianca and I were finally allowed to leave. David offered to drive us home, and I accepted gratefully. The night had taken everything out of me. In the car, Bianca finally broke down. The tears she'd been holding back since the basement came flooding out, and I pulled her close, letting her cry against my shoulder. "I was so scared," she whispered. She kept talking to me, saying terrible things. She said you'd never really love anyone because you were broken. She said I was wasting my time. "None of that is true," I said firmly. "She was trying to hurt you to hurt me." "But what if," Bianca pulled back, looking at me with red-rimmed eyes. "What if she's right? What if you're not ready for this? For us?" The question hung in the air between us. It was fair, more than fair. I had dragged her into my nightmare, put her life in danger, exposed her to the worst parts of my past. Maybe I'm not, I admitted. Maybe I have more healing to do than I thought. But I know one thing, Bianca, what I feel for you is real. It's not an escape or a distraction. You make me want to be better, to do better. And if you need time, if you need space after all of this, I understand. She was quiet for a long moment, then squeezed my hand. I don't need space. I just need honesty. No more surprises. No more secrets. No more secrets, I agreed. When we arrived at my apartment, SEI was there with Grace, who was already asleep on the couch. He stood up immediately when he saw Bianca. Are you okay? He asked. She nodded. I will be. Thank you for taking care of Grace. Always, SEI said. Then he turned to me. Bro, we need to talk. Alone. I glanced at Bianca, who nodded. I'll sit with Grace. SEI led me to the kitchen and closed the door. His face was serious, more serious than I'd seen in a long time. What is it? I asked. While you were at the station, Maya called, he said. She wanted to know what happened, how much the police knew. When I told her about the USB drive, she got very quiet. Then she said she needed to speak with you immediately, that it was urgent. She's probably worried about what Elizabeth claimed, I said. Any good lawyer would be. Maybe, SEI said. But bro, there's something else. I got curious after Elizabeth's accusation, so I did some digging online. Maya's law firm, Brookstone and Associates, has been involved in 3 major fraud cases in the last 5 years. In all 3 cases, the firms being investigated ended up losing everything: assets seized, accounts frozen, businesses dissolved. That's what fraud investigations do, I pointed out. Yes, but here's the thing: in all 3 cases, Brookstone and Associates represented individuals within those companies who claimed to be victims. And in all 3 cases, after the dust settled, those same individuals ended up on the boards of new companies that acquired the assets of the dissolved ones. 4 pennies on the dollar. My stomach dropped. You think Maya's firm creates victims to prey on companies? I think it's worth investigating, SEI said. Elizabeth is a lot of things, but she's not stupid. If she went to the trouble of putting together evidence, maybe there's something there. I thought about all the times Maya had encouraged me to cut off communication with Elizabeth, to fight her in court, to never reconcile. I'd thought she was protecting me. But what if she was protecting something else? The police have the drive, I said. If there's anything on it, they'll find it. And if Maya is involved, SEI countered, how long before she knows the police are looking into her? How long before evidence disappears? He had a point. I pulled out my phone and called Detective Williams. Mr. Adiwale, he answered. Is everything all right? I need to know something, I said. That USB drive, have you looked at it yet? We're planning to examine it first thing tomorrow morning. Why? Because if my lawyer is involved in what Elizabeth claimed, she might try to interfere. Is there any way to examine it sooner? Tonight. There was a pause. That's an unusual request. Do you have specific concerns about tampering? I told him what SEI had discovered about Maya's firm. Williams listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a moment. I'll have the tech team look at it tonight, he said finally. And Mr. Adiwale? Until we know what's on that drive, I'd suggest you don't discuss the case with your lawyer. Understood. I hung up and looked at SEI. Now we wait. But waiting had never been my strong suit. I opened my laptop and started searching for everything I could find about Brookstone and Associates. SEI was right, the pattern was there if you knew what to look for. 3 companies, 3 fraud investigations, 3 acquisitions by new entities with board members who'd been represented by Maya's firm. I was so deep in research that I didn't hear my phone ring the first time. The second time, Bianca answered it. Tignola, she said, holding out the phone. It's Maya. I took the phone, my heart rate picking up. Maya. Tignola, thank God, she said. and her voice sounded genuinely relieved. "I heard what happened. Are you and Bianca okay?" "We're fine. Elizabeth has been arrested." "I know. The police called me." "Tignola, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Elizabeth gave you something, didn't she? A USB drive." I didn't answer immediately. "Tignola, whatever is on that drive, you need to understand that Elizabeth is a master manipulator. She's been planning this for months, creating false evidence, manipulating records. She wants to destroy everyone who helped you escape her control, and I'm her primary target." "Why would she target you specifically?" I asked. "Because I'm the one who protected you legally. I'm the one who ensured she couldn't use the courts to control you anymore. She sees me as the reason she lost everything." "Or," I said carefully, "you see her as the reason your plan to acquire her company's assets fell apart." Silence. "What are you talking about?" Maya asked, but her voice had changed. The warmth was gone. "I'm talking about the pattern, Maya. 3 companies your firm has been involved with. 3 fraud cases. 3 convenient acquisitions. Elizabeth might be a lot of things, but maybe she was telling the truth about this one thing." "You don't know what you're talking about," Maya said, and now there was an edge to her voice. "Elizabeth is feeding you lies, and you're believing her because you feel guilty. Don't do this, Tignola. Don't throw away everything we've built because of her manipulation." "We?" I said. "What exactly have we built, Maya?" Another silence, longer this time. "I've been your advocate," she said finally. "I've protected you, guided you, kept you from making terrible mistakes. And this is how you repay me? By believing the word of a woman who kidnapped someone you care about?" "I'm not repaying you with anything except the truth," I said. "Whatever's on that drive, the police will find it. If you're innocent, you have nothing to worry about. And if I'm not?" Maya asked quietly, "What then, Tignola? Have you thought about what happens to your case? To your custody of Grace? Everything is tied together: Elizabeth's fraud case, your divorce, the custody arrangement. If you destabilize one piece, the whole thing falls apart. Is that a threat?" "It's a fact," she said. "I'm trying to protect you from yourself. Don't open this door. You won't like what you find on the other side." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone in hand, my mind racing. SEI had been watching from the doorway. "What did she say?" he asked. "She's scared," I replied. Which means Elizabeth might actually be telling the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything that had happened over the past year: the fraud charges against Elizabeth, the frozen accounts, the custody battle, Maya's seemingly selfless assistance. If it was all connected, if Maya had been manipulating both of us from the start, then nothing I thought I knew was real. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. "Detective Williams. Mr. Adiwale, you need to come down to the station. Now." "What's wrong?" "We examined the USB drive. You need to see this." 20 minutes later, I was back at the police station. Williams led me to a small conference room where a laptop sat on the table, the screen displaying rows of files. "We brought in a forensic accountant to review the documents," Williams explained. "What we found is significant." He clicked open a folder labeled Communications. Inside were hundreds of emails between Maya and partners at her firm, discussing strategies for acquiring Elizabeth's company assets. But there was more: conversations about manipulating evidence, coaching witnesses, even creating false documents to implicate Elizabeth in fraud she hadn't committed. "This can't be real," I whispered. "It's real," Williams said. "We've already begun verifying the documents against other records. Mr. Adiwale, your lawyer has been running an elaborate scheme to acquire companies through manufactured fraud investigations. Elizabeth was just her latest target. But the fraud was real, I said. Elizabeth's company did have missing funds. Yes, but according to these documents, those funds were embezzled by people working with your lawyer's firm. They made it look like Elizabeth was stealing from her own company, then used the investigation to freeze her assets while they positioned themselves to acquire everything at a fraction of its value. I sank into a chair. She used me. Maya used me to keep Elizabeth distracted, to make sure we kept fighting instead of comparing notes. Williams nodded. It appears so. And there's more. According to these files, Maya was planning to go after your personal assets next: the apartment, your savings, everything you've worked for since coming to Canada. She was building a case that you were complicit in Elizabeth's fraud, that you'd benefited from stolen funds. I never touched her company's money, I said. We know. But that's the beauty of her scheme: it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what she can make look true in court. He paused. We're issuing a warrant for Maya's arrest within the hour. But I need to warn you, this is going to get complicated. Every case she's touched will need to be reviewed, including yours. What does that mean for me and Grace? I asked. It means everything is in limbo until we sort out what was legitimate legal work and what was manipulation. Your custody of Grace should be safe. There's nothing in these documents suggesting that was fabricated. But other aspects of your case might need to be revisited. I thought about Elizabeth, sitting in a holding cell, probably thinking no one would believe her. For once in our complicated history, she'd been telling the truth, and I'd almost not listened. I need to talk to her, I said. Williams frowned. To who? Elizabeth? Yes. She deserves to know that someone finally believes her. The holding area was cold and clinical, all concrete and fluorescent lights that made everyone look half dead. Elizabeth sat on a bench in a small cell, her arms wrapped around herself. When she saw me approaching with the guard, her eyes widened. Tignola, she said, standing up. I didn't think you'd come. The guard opened the door and let me in, then stepped back to give us privacy while remaining in sight. I stood there for a moment, looking at the woman who'd been both my greatest love and my worst nightmare. You were right, I said simply. About Maya. About everything. Her face crumpled, and she sat back down heavily. The USB drive? I nodded. The police verified it. They're issuing a warrant for Maya's arrest. You were set up, Elizabeth. We both were. She laughed, but it was a broken sound. Do you know how many times I tried to tell you? How many times I tried to show you that something wasn't right? But you wouldn't listen. You were so sure I was the villain. You gave me plenty of reasons to think that, I said quietly, sitting beside her. The manipulation, the control, the lies, those weren't Maya's doing. Those were yours. I know, she whispered. I know what I did to you, to us. I convinced myself it was love, that if I just held on tight enough, you'd never leave. But all I did was give you reasons to run. We sat in silence for a moment. What happens now? She asked. The police are reviewing your case. If Maya manufactured the evidence against you, you'll be cleared. Your assets will be unfrozen, and your company can be restored. I paused. But Elizabeth, that doesn't erase everything else. The way you treated me, what you did to Bianca, those choices were yours. She nodded slowly, tears tracking down her face. I know. When they arrest Maya, when the truth comes out, I'll still have to live with what I became. The woman who was so terrified of losing control that she lost herself instead. What will you do? I asked. When this is over. She looked at me with eyes that finally seemed clear, no longer clouded by obsession or rage. I'll rebuild. Not the company, not the empire, just me. I'll get help, real help. Therapy, treatment, whatever it takes to understand why I became this person. She wiped her eyes. And I'll earn back Grace's trust, if that's even possible. Not as someone who demands access, but as someone who proves I deserve it. That could take years, I said. I have nothing but time, she replied. And Tignola, I want you to know that I'm genuinely happy you found someone kind. Someone who doesn't need to own you to love you. Bianca seems like a good person. The words surprised me. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said with a sad smile. Just promise me you'll protect that. Don't let your past, don't let me ruin what you could have with her. I promise. The guard approached then, indicating our time was up. As I stood to leave, Elizabeth reached out and touched my hand briefly. I'm sorry, she whispered. For all of it. I truly am. I know, I said. And Elizabeth, I forgive you. Her eyes widened with shock, then filled with fresh tears. But they were different tears now, not bitter or angry, just sad and cleansing. As I walked out of the holding area, I felt something lift from my shoulders. A weight I'd been carrying for years, the weight of unresolved pain and unanswered questions. Elizabeth and I would never be friends, probably never even be friendly. But we could finally be honest. Outside the station, dawn was breaking over Toronto. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, the kind of sunrise that makes you believe in new beginnings. My phone buzzed. A text from Bianca. Grace woke up asking for you. We made pancakes. Come home. Home. Such a simple word, but it carried everything I'd been searching for. 2 weeks later, Maya was arrested attempting to board a flight to the Cayman Islands. She'd liquidated several accounts and was preparing to disappear, but the police had been monitoring her movements since the night the USB drive was examined. The investigation that followed was massive. It turned out Elizabeth's case was just one of 7 companies Maya's firm had targeted over the past decade. The total theft was in the tens of millions. Several of her partners were also arrested, though some fled the country before warrants could be served. For me, the aftermath was bittersweet. My custody of Grace was confirmed as legitimate and uncontested. Elizabeth's fraud charges were dropped entirely, and her assets were unfrozen. But the legal mess would take months, possibly years, to fully untangle. Through it all, Bianca stayed. Not because she was trapped or obligated, but because she chose to. We took things slowly, rebuilding trust that had been shaken but not broken. She met Grace properly, not as a stranger or a threat, but as someone who cared about both of us. Grace, with the resilient adaptability of children, accepted Bianca's presence with cautious curiosity that gradually warmed into affection. She still asked about her mother, and I always told her the truth in age-appropriate ways. Mommy made some mistakes, but she's working hard to be better. Elizabeth kept her promise. She checked herself into a residential treatment program for trauma and behavioral disorders. Every 2 weeks, I would bring Grace to a supervised visitation center where they could spend time together. The visits were awkward at first. Elizabeth didn't know how to be a mother without also trying to be in control. But slowly, she learned. She learned to listen to Grace's stories without directing them. To play without setting rules. To say I love you without attaching conditions. One afternoon, about 3 months after everything had been resolved, I picked Grace up from a visit to find Elizabeth waiting outside the center. Tignola, she said, can we talk? Just for a minute. I glanced at Grace, who was showing SEI a drawing she'd made. Sure. We walked a short distance away, and Elizabeth took a deep breath. I wanted to tell you that I'm selling the company, what's left of it, anyway. Starting fresh with something smaller, something honest. And I'm leaving Toronto. Where will you go? Vancouver, maybe. Or Calgary. Somewhere I can rebuild without everyone knowing my history. She paused. But I'll keep coming back for Grace. I'll never miss a visit, I promise. Good, I said. She needs you. The real you, not the performance. Elizabeth smiled sadly. I'm still figuring out who that is. But I'm trying. She hesitated. There's something else. I want to thank you for not turning Grace against me. You could have, easily. You had every right. But you didn't. She deserves to know both her parents, I said. Even the flawed ones. Especially the flawed ones, Elizabeth agreed. She looked past me to where Grace was laughing at something SEI said. She's beautiful. Happy. You're doing an amazing job with her. We're doing an amazing job with her, I corrected gently. You're her mother. That doesn't change just because we're not together. She nodded, blinking back tears. Thank you for saying that. As she walked away, back toward the life she was slowly rebuilding, I realized something profound. Healing doesn't mean forgetting the pain. It means learning to carry it without letting it define you. 6 months after Elizabeth's arrest and subsequent release, life had found a rhythm. Not perfect, not without challenges, but steady and real. Bianca and I had moved into a larger apartment together, one with enough space for Grace to have her own room decorated with drawings and toys and all the chaos of childhood. SEI had met someone too, a nurse named Amora, who made him laugh in ways I'd never seen before. At work, the company had been understanding about everything I'd gone through. My colleagues, who'd once whispered about my scandals, now simply treated me as one of them. The quiet guy who worked hard and occasionally brought his daughter to the office on PD days. Elizabeth had indeed moved to Calgary, where she started a small consulting firm helping businesses with ethical compliance. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, but she approached it with genuine humility, often speaking publicly about her own failures as cautionary tales. One evening, as I tucked Grace into bed, she looked up at me with those serious eyes that sometimes made her seem much older than 6. "Daddy," she said, "are you happy now?" The question caught me off guard. "What makes you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because you smile more," she said simply. "You smile like Uncle SEI smiles when Auntie Amora comes over. Like Auntie Bianca smiles when she sees us." I thought about how to answer, how to put into words the journey from darkness to light. "Yes," I said finally. "I'm happy. Not because everything is perfect, but because I'm free to be myself. And I have you, and Uncle SEI, and Auntie Bianca. That's more than enough." She nodded, satisfied, and turned over to sleep. But as I stood to leave, she murmured, "Mommy's trying too." "I can tell." "Yes," I whispered. "She is." Life moved forward. Seasons changed. Grace started first grade. Bianca's parents unofficially adopted me and SEI into their family, insisting we attend every Sunday dinner and holiday celebration. Elizabeth continued her visits, and slowly, the tension that had once defined our interactions faded into something like mutual respect. We would never be close, but we could be civil. We could co-parent. We could both want what was best for Grace without it being a competition. One December evening, as snow fell softly outside our apartment window, Bianca and I sat on the couch while Grace slept and SEI was out with Amora. The Christmas tree we'd decorated together glowed in the corner, and everything felt peaceful. "Can I ask you something?" Bianca said, nestling closer. "Anything. Do you ever regret it? Coming to Canada, meeting Elizabeth, everything that happened?" I thought about it, really thought about it. The pain, the manipulation, the years of feeling trapped. But also Grace. Also the lessons learned. Also finding Bianca on the other side of the storm. "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. I regret the pain I caused others, and I wish I'd been stronger sooner. But everything that happened made me who I am. And I like who I'm becoming." She smiled and kissed my cheek. "Good. Because I like who you're becoming too. Does this mean you're planning to stick around?" I teased. Try to get rid of me, she challenged. Never, I promised. I spent too long in a cage. I'm not giving up freedom again, especially not the freedom to love someone who loves me back. Smooth talker, she laughed. I learned from the best mistakes, I replied. As we sat there in the warm glow of the Christmas lights, I realized something profound. Peace isn't the absence of struggle. It's the presence of people who make the struggle worthwhile. My phone buzzed, a text from Elizabeth. Grace's Christmas gift is wrapped and ready for her visit next week. Also, I wanted you to know I'm dating someone. A therapist, ironically. He knows my history and likes me anyway. Thought you should hear it from me first. I showed Bianca the message. She read it and smiled. That's good, right? Yeah, I said. It's really good. I texted back. That's wonderful, Elizabeth. Grace will be excited about the gift. And congratulations. You deserve happiness too. Her response came quickly. Thank you. That means more than you know. Merry Christmas, Tignola. To all of you. Merry Christmas. I set the phone down and pulled Bianca closer. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in white. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, it always did. But tonight, right now, there was only warmth and peace and the steady rhythm of breathing beside someone you trusted. Tell me something, Bianca said softly. If you could go back and change anything, would you? I thought about Grace's laugh, about Sei's terrible jokes, about Bianca's kindness. I thought about the person I'd become through breaking and healing. Not a single thing, I said. Because every choice, even the wrong ones, led me here. And here is exactly where I want to be. She squeezed my hand. Here is pretty good. Here is perfect, I corrected. And for the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, I meant it completely. Spring arrived in Toronto with the kind of hope that only comes after surviving a hard winter. The city thawed, green pushing through grey, life insisting on itself despite everything trying to hold it back. I stood in the courthouse for what I hoped would be the last time, but this visit was different. Elizabeth and I weren't fighting, we were finalizing our divorce with mutual consent, updated custody arrangements, and a civil settlement that left both of us whole. Maya's arrest had changed everything. With the truth exposed, Elizabeth's assets had been restored, and she'd insisted on establishing a trust fund for Grace's education, separate from any future disputes. We'd agreed on joint custody with a flexible schedule that prioritized Grace's well-being over our own convenience. The judge, a different one from all our previous hearings, reviewed the documents with a bemused expression. I have to say, she said, in 20 years on the bench, I've never seen a case transform quite like this one. Mr. Adiwale, Mrs. Elizabeth, I commend you both for putting your daughter first. It only took us 2 years and a fraud scandal to get there, Elizabeth said with dry humor that made even the judge smile. Better late than never, the judge replied, signing the final documents. You're officially divorced, with joint custody established. Congratulations on finding a peaceful resolution. Outside the courthouse, Elizabeth and I stood on the steps for a moment, an awkward silence between us. So this is it, she said finally. Officially over. The marriage is over, I corrected. But we'll always be connected through Grace. I know. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a nervous gesture I remembered from years ago. Tignola, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Of how you protected yourself, how you protected Grace, how you found the strength to walk away when I gave you every reason to stay. And I'm proud of you, I said, surprising both of us. For getting help. For changing. For becoming someone Grace can look up to. Her eyes shimmered. That means everything. A car pulled up, her boyfriend Marcus, The therapist she'd mentioned. He got out and nodded respectfully at me. "Tignola," he said, shaking my hand. "Nice to finally meet you properly. Elizabeth speaks highly of you." "That's generous, considering our history," I replied. "The past is important," Marcus said. "But it's not a life sentence." I liked him immediately. As they drove away, Bianca emerged from where she'd been waiting across the street, giving us space. "How do you feel?" she asked, taking my hand. "Free," I said. "Completely, finally free." That weekend, we organized something unprecedented, a joint birthday party for Grace's 7th birthday, with both sides of her family present. Elizabeth and Marcus came from Calgary, bringing thoughtful gifts and genuine warmth. Bianca's parents provided the venue and enough food to feed an army. SEI and Amora handled decorations with enthusiasm that bordered on chaos. And Grace was radiant, surrounded by everyone who loved her, finally able to enjoy both her parents in the same space without tension or fear. At one point, I found myself standing next to Elizabeth near the snack table, watching Grace play with her friends. "She's a miracle," Elizabeth said softly. "Despite everything we put her through, she's somehow okay." "More than okay," I agreed. "She's remarkable. Like her mother." Elizabeth looked at me sharply, then softened. "Thank you. That's kind. It's true. You gave her resilience, determination, strength. She got good things from both of us. And she'll get stability from you and Bianca," Elizabeth added. "I can see how much Bianca loves her. How much Grace loves her back. Does that bother you?" I asked carefully. She thought for a moment. "A year ago, it would have destroyed me. But now I'm just grateful Grace has so many people in her corner. A child can never have too much love." "No," I agreed. "She can't." Marcus approached then, handing Elizabeth a glass of juice. "Everything okay here?" "Perfect," Elizabeth said, smiling at him before looking back at me. "Tignola, Marcus and I are thinking about getting married next year. Nothing big, just something small. I wanted you to know." "That's wonderful," I said genuinely. "Congratulations. We'd like you to bring Grace to the wedding," she continued. "If you're comfortable with that." I glanced at Bianca, who was across the yard helping kids with a game. She caught my eye and smiled, that smile that still made my heart skip. "We'd be honored to come," I said. The party wound down as the sun set, painting the sky in oranges and purples. Parents collected their children, thank yous and goodbyes echoing through the yard. Grace, exhausted and happy, fell asleep in my arms as we loaded the car. Elizabeth leaned through the window to kiss her daughter's forehead. "Sweet dreams, baby girl," she whispered. "She had a good day," I said. "The best," Elizabeth agreed. She straightened up. "Thank you, Tignola, for making this possible. For letting me be part of her life even after everything. She's your daughter too," I said simply. "She always will be." As we drove home, Bianca reached over and squeezed my hand. "That was beautiful," she said. "Seeing you and Elizabeth like that, civil, respectful, actually co-parenting. It gives me hope." "Hope for what?" "For us. For the future. For the family we're building." She paused. "Tignola, I want to talk about something." My heart rate picked up. "Okay." Grace asked me the other day if I was going to be her real auntie or her real mommy. She said she already has a mommy, but she wouldn't mind having two. I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine, giving her my full attention. "What did you tell her?" I told her that families can look lots of different ways, and that I loved her no matter what she wanted to call me. Bianca's eyes were serious. "But Tignola, I need to know, where do you see this going?" "Us." I took her hands in mine. "I see us building something real. Something healthy and honest. I see Grace growing up with parents who love her and a stepmother who chose to be in her life. I see Isi as an uncle and Amora as an aunt. I see Sunday dinners and school plays and arguments about homework and vacations to visit family in Africa. And, she prompted, a small smile playing at her lips. And eventually, if you're willing, I see a wedding. Not tomorrow, not next month, but when we're both ready. When you're absolutely certain that you want this, all of this. The complicated ex-wife, the precocious daughter, the brother who never leaves, the whole messy, beautiful reality of it. Bianca's eyes filled with happy tears. I want all of it. The mess, the beauty, every piece. Then we'll take our time and build it right, I said, kissing her softly. No rushing, no pressure, just us figuring it out together. Together, she echoed. I like the sound of that. 1 year later, on a warm summer evening, I stood in Bianca's parents' backyard, the same place where we'd held Grace's 7th birthday party. But tonight was different. Tonight, surrounded by everyone who mattered, I knelt down on one knee and asked Bianca to marry me. She said yes before I even finished the question, tears streaming down her face as our families erupted in cheers. Grace jumped up and down, shouting, "I'm getting another mommy." SEI grabbed Amora and spun her around, already planning his best man speech. Bianca's parents hugged each other, then us, then everyone in reach. And there, near the back of the crowd, I saw Elizabeth and Marcus. She was smiling, genuinely, warmly, and when she caught my eye, she raised her glass in a silent toast. To new beginnings. To healing. To the complicated, messy, beautiful work of becoming better humans. The wedding took place 6 months later in a small church, with Grace as the flower girl and SEI as my best man. Amora caught the bouquet, which made SEI turn an amusing shade of red. Elizabeth and Marcus attended with grace and joy, standing in the back but participating fully in the celebration. During the reception, Elizabeth approached Bianca and me at the head table. I wanted to give you both something, she said, handing us an envelope. It's a letter for Grace, to be opened on her 18th birthday. In it, I tell her the truth about everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. I tell her how you both loved her enough to put aside pain and pride. How her father protected her even when it cost him. How you, Bianca, chose to love a child who wasn't yours by blood but became yours by choice. Bianca took the envelope with trembling hands. Elizabeth, this is. It's necessary, Elizabeth said. One day she'll have questions. One day she'll wonder if the adults in her life were perfect. This letter will tell her we weren't, but that we tried. That we loved her enough to become better people. Thank you, I said quietly. Elizabeth smiled. Thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. For years, I thought power meant control. You taught me it means letting go. As she walked back to Marcus, Bianca leaned her head on my shoulder. We did it, she whispered. We actually built something beautiful out of all that pain. We did, I agreed, watching Grace dance with SEI, her laughter filling the room. And it's only going to get better from here. Asterisk asterisk 5 years later asterisk asterisk. I sat on the back porch of our new house, watching Grace, now 12, teach her little brother Samuel how to kick a soccer ball. Bianca was inside with our 3-month-old daughter, Zara, singing softly as she rocked her to sleep. SEI and Amora lived 2 streets over with their twin boys. We had dinner together every Sunday, a tradition that had held strong for years. Elizabeth had married Marcus 3 years ago in that small ceremony we'd all attended. They lived in Calgary, where she ran her successful consulting firm and he maintained his practice. She visited Toronto once a month, always making time for Grace and, increasingly, for Samuel and Zara as well. She was Mama Elizabeth to them, a beloved adult in their lives who brought gifts and wisdom in equal measure. My phone buzzed. A text from Elizabeth. Grace sent me her report card. All A's. You must be so proud. I replied, very proud. She gets her intelligence from both of us. And her kindness from Bianca. Elizabeth responded. How's little Zara? Perfect. Sleeping right now, thank God. Enjoy the peace while it lasts. She wrote, adding a laughing emoji. Marcus says hi. We're thinking of visiting next month if that works. Always welcome. I typed. Grace would love it. I set the phone down and watched my children play. Samuel shrieked with laughter as Grace pretended he'd made an impossible goal. The sound carried across the yard, pure and unself-conscious. Bianca stepped out onto the porch, Zara sleeping against her shoulder. What are you thinking about? She asked, settling into the chair beside me. How far we've all come, I said. 5 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this. Any of this. Do you ever miss Africa? She asked. It was a question she asked sometimes, always gently, always ready to listen. I miss parts of it, I admitted. The warmth, the chaos, the sense of community. But I don't miss who I was there, young, naive, thinking life was simple. And now? Now I know life is complicated, messy, hard. But it's also full of second chances. Third chances. As many chances as we're willing to fight for. Grace noticed us watching and waved. Dad. Come play with us. In a minute. I called back. She's growing up so fast, Bianca said. Soon she'll be a teenager, too cool to play with us. Then we'll have 2 more to keep us busy, I replied, gesturing to Samuel and the sleeping Zara. True. Bianca smiled. Our own little village. It takes a village, I quoted. It does, she agreed. And we built a good one. As the sun set over our little piece of Toronto, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the fear, all of it had seemed insurmountable at the time. But here, on the other side, I could finally see the purpose in the struggle. I'd learned that love without freedom is imprisonment. That healing requires honesty, even when it hurts. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing not to let the past write your future. And most importantly, I'd learned that peace isn't something you find, it's something you build, one difficult choice at a time. Tignola. Bianca's voice brought me back to the present. Yeah. Thank you. For what? For not giving up. On yourself, on love, on the possibility of happiness. A lesser man would have let Elizabeth's obsession break him. But you fought for peace instead of revenge. You chose healing over hatred. I took her free hand and kissed it gently. I couldn't have done it without you. You showed me what healthy love looks like. We showed each other, she corrected. Grace called out again, more insistent this time. Dad. Come on. I stood up, stretching. Duty calls. As I walked across the yard toward my children, I glanced back at the house, at Bianca rocking our daughter on the porch, at the warm light spilling from the windows, at the life we'd built together. This was home. Not a place, but a feeling. Not perfect, but real. And after everything I'd been through, real was more than enough. It was everything.